Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into Xilonen's buff, specifically her res shredding. If you're wondering what res shredding is, how it works, and why it's such a big deal, then you're in the right place. I'll break it all down in a simple way so you can understand just how much of an impact it has in battles. All right, we're going to break it all down step by step. First, let's start with the basics. What exactly is res shredding? Res stands for resistance, and shredding means reducing or cutting through it. But whose resistance are we talking about, and why does it matter? Well, let me show you something. So the resistance we're shredding belongs to our enemies. Yes, that's right. Enemy resistance is what we're going to reduce. As you can see, I've pulled up a list that shows all enemy types along with their resistances. This will help us understand which enemies are tougher to deal with and how res shredding makes a difference. Every enemy has a certain percentage of all elemental attack resistance and physical attack resistance. You can see these values in the elemental res and physical res sections of the list. But if you look further, there's an other section that shows some enemies have special resistance against specific elements. Now let's take an example of an enemy to make it easier to understand. We are going to fight against the Cryo-Regisvine, Electro-Regisvine, and Pyro-Regisvine using a Pyro element character to test resistance against elemental damage. The Cryo-Regisvine has low resistance to all elements except the Cryo element, and as you can see, the constant damage is 25,000 per hit. The Electro-Regisvine has low resistance to all elements except the Electro element, and the constant damage is 25,000 per hit. Now let's check on Pyro-Regisvine. The Pyro-Regisvine has low resistance to all elements except the Pyro element, and the constant damage is just 8,000 per hit. Here an extra clip. Raiden Boss, her resistance for all elements is same. That's why everyone loves her for testing their character's damage. As you can see, the constant damage is 23,000 per hit. While the Arlecchino boss has strong resistance against the Pyro element, that's why we can't deal as much damage to her compared to the Raiden boss. Now that you understand what resistance means for enemies, let's take a look at how Xilonen shreds their resistance. I'm checking out her profile in the character trial mode since I don't have her yet. But don't worry, I'll break down everything about her kit right here. Let's break down Xilonen's elemental skill, Yohual's Scratch, in simple terms. When you activate this skill, Xilonen dashes forward, dealing geo damage based on her defense stat. This action puts her into the Night Soul's Blessing state, where her attacks can reduce enemies' elemental resistance, making them more vulnerable to your team's attacks. To maximize this resistance shredding effect, it's important to have at least 2 non-geo characters in your party, such as Pyro, Hydro, Electro, or Cryo elements. This team composition allows Xilonen to effectively lower enemies' resistances, boosting your overall damage output. Now let's see how it works in battle. Here I activated her skill by dashing forward and hitting the enemy. The main thing to remember is that you need to add 2 characters in the team with Xilonen, whose elements can trigger Crystallize, so there is no Geo, Anemo, or Dendro. Stick to Pyro, Hydro, Electro, or Cryo for the best results. If possible, add 3 characters to Xilonen's team with crystallizable elements. I'll explain why in a moment. But first, check out this indicator. It shows how many elemental samplers Xilonen has collected. Once she collects 2 elemental samplers, she can reduce enemy resistance. That's why we need at least 2 characters with crystallizable elements, Pyro, Hydro, Electro, or Cryo, to make sure she can trigger this effect efficiently. Another important thing, how do you know if Xilonen is actually reducing the enemy's resistance? Just check the enemy for downward moving arrow lines. This indicator means their resistance is being lowered. And here's another great part. Even if Xilonen hits just 1 enemy with her skill, her resistance shredding applies to all nearby enemies, making it super effective in group fights. Now let's talk about Xilonen's elemental burst, Ocelot Q point. Xilonen's elemental burst has 2 different effects depending on her source samples. If she has at least 2 change source samples, she plays an ebullient rhythm, which heals the active character at intervals based on her def. If she has fewer than 2 change source samples, she plays an ardent rhythm, dealing 2 extra hits of AoE geo damage based on her def. So depending on your team's setup, her burst can either provide extra healing or deal more damage. To use Xilonen's elemental burst for maximum healing, follow these steps. First, use her elemental skill and hit enemies. This will generate 2 or 3 source samples. Then activate her elemental burst. With enough source samples, the healing effect will be much stronger. If you use her burst without using her skill first, the healing won't be as strong. The key is to collect source samples before bursting. To further boost her healing, make sure to have 3 characters in your team with crystallizable elements: Pyro, Hydro, Electro, or Cryo. This helps her consistently generate source samples, making her burst even more effective. Now let's talk about Xilonen's passive talent, Netatilisli's Echoes. While in the Night Soul's Blessing state, her passive gives different effects based on her source samples. If she has at least 2 changed source samples, her normal and plunging attacks will generate 35 Night Soul points when hitting enemies, can happen once every 0.1 seconds. If she has fewer than 2 changed source samples, her normal and plunging attacks deal 30% more damage instead. About Xilonen's second passive, Portable Armored Sheath. While in the Night Soul's Blessing state, when Xilonen's Night Soul points reach maximum, she will trigger an effect equal to that of her Night Soul Burst. This effect can be triggered once every 14 seconds. Additionally, when nearby party members trigger a Night Soul Burst, Xilonen's DEF is increased by 20% for 15 seconds. That means her skill and burst effects will enhance more. Now about her signature weapon. She gains Ode to Flowers after normal or plunging attacks hit an opponent. Her defense increases by 8% and gains a 10% all-elemental damage bonus for 6 seconds. Max 2 stacks. This effect can trigger once per 0.1 seconds. When this effect reaches 2 stacks or the second stack's duration is refreshed, increase all nearby party members' all-elemental DMG bonus by 8% for every 1,000 DF the equipping character has, up to a maximum of 25.6% for 15 seconds. Now let's talk about her artifact set. You must use Hero of the Cinder City set on her. That because 2-piece bonus. When a teammate triggers a Night Soul Burst, the user gets 6 energy. 4-piece bonus. When the user triggers an elemental reaction, nearby teammates get a 12% damage bonus for the elements involved, lasting 15 seconds. But if the user is in the Night Soul's Blessing state, this bonus jumps to 40% for 20 seconds. This works even off-field, but bonuses from multiple sets don't stack. Now let's talk about how much total resistance shredding Xilonen can provide. Xilonen can provide up to a 36% elemental resistance shred to enemies based on the elements present in your party, with each party member of a different element allowing her to reduce the resistance of that element by a portion of the 36% total. You can check the enemy's resistance list and see how much 36% will be of the enemy's resistance. Most of the enemies will be at 0 resistance if you use Xilonen on them. Now about her artifact set, the Hero of Cinder City. 4-piece bonus. When the equipped character triggers an elemental reaction related to their elemental type, all nearby party members receive a 12% elemental damage bonus for the elements involved, lasting 15 seconds. If the equipped character is in the Night Soul's Blessing state during this trigger, the bonus increases by an additional 28%, totaling a 40% elemental damage bonus for 20 seconds. This effect can activate even if the character is off-field, but bonuses from multiple sets with the same name do not stack. Now we will discuss 2 facts. Is resistance shredding important? Yes, 100%. If you've been watching my videos, you already know. Enemies with high resistance take way less damage, and that's a huge problem. No matter how much attack you stack, if the enemy resists your hits, you're not doing full damage. That's why resistance shredding is so powerful. If you want to know some of the best characters for resistance shredding, then these are Kazuha, Zhongli, Sucrose, and Jean, all amazing at lowering enemy resistance so you can hit harder. Resistance shredding versus attack buff. Which one is better? This is like asking, who's better, Furina or Xilonen? And the answer, both are equally important. Resistance shredding makes sure your damage isn't getting blocked, while attack buffs increase your raw damage. But here's the real trick. Combine them. First, shred the enemy's resistance, then boost your attack, and boom, your damage skyrockets. Alright, that's everything you need to know about Xilonen in this video. But don't go anywhere, because in the next video, I'll cover her best teams, level up, and F2P weapon material farming. So make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss it. If you still have any questions about Xilonen, drop them in the comments. I'll be checking. See you in the next one.